Hello, you're listening to Future Artefacts FM, a radio show hosted by Niamh Schmidtke and Nina Davies.
Earlier this year, several radio frequencies were discovered airing a collection of broadcasts. At first, they sounded like regular news stories and interviews. They felt familiar, but also not quite belonging to our present. Slowly, the listeners came to believe that what they were listening to did indeed belong to their world, just not their time. They were looking into the future through the mundane edges of radio recordings and public service announcements. While this material is still being meticulously studied by researchers in various universities and museums, your hosts have managed to gain access to this collection to air a selection of these broadcasts for you, our listeners.
For full disclosure, we will not be sharing this collection with you, as this introduction is based on a fictional event. In this monthly broadcast, Future Artefacts FM, we will present speculative fiction pieces by artists and writers, followed by conversation with hosts Niamh Schmidtke and Nina Davies. The programme will focus on fictional works intended for broadcast, such as radio plays or fictional interviews, to carve out a better understanding of the now by exploring various interpretations of the future.
This programme is kindly supported using public funding by the National Lottery through Arts Council England and the Elephant Trust. Welcome back to Future Artefacts FM. As per usual, I'm your host, Nina Davies.
And Niamh Schmidtke, and we're welcoming you to episode 12.
Woohoo!
Today we're in the studio at Sienna. Hi, Sienna.
Hello.
How are you today?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. Excited to hear the piece. Sienna is our final artist of our current ACE grant. Very big thank you to Arts Council and the Elephant Trust for making the current season possible. Today's
a special episode.
Yes. Over the summer, we were very lucky to work with HVH Arts to deliver some workshops about future world building. Sienna was one of the participants at that workshop, and over the last few months, we've been developing a story with her. Today, we're really happy that the CEO and founder of HVH Arts, Debbie Clark, is here. HVH Arts is a registered charity inspiring a generation of young people by offering them a gateway to the arts. Welcome to the show, Debbie.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on, and thank you for the amazing project that you have been delivering all over last year, and of course with my beneficiary Sienna, who has been with HVH Arts since the age of 8. Wow. So it's been a long time. So basically, we started a charity in 2013. We came into Queen's Crescent, Gospel Oak, and we've supported over 525 unique young people. Your project has been really inspiring, and it has really developed Sienna as a writer. I thank you for that. But my reason for starting the charity was to give the gift of art through inspiring young people. And I wanted them to have the skills and tools to develop lifelong artistic passions and to be able to express themselves and gain confidence in all areas of their lives. And being a photographer myself, I knew from personal experience the transformational effect of having a medium that I can express myself through. And I wanted children and young people to feel that magic too. So I would just like to add that Sienna has been one of the most dedicated scholars within the foundation. We support, as I said, quite a lot of young people. And she was a recipient of the McCrory Award this year. And she's going on to, I think, become a young actor.
You'll get a little sample of Sienna's acting in this episode.
Yeah. I can't wait. But
and of Nina's and myself as well, although ours is much, much worse than Sienna's.
But Nina and Niamh, thank you very much. You've been really inspiring.
And we couldn't have done it without you. So
thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
It's been a great project, and let's hope you get many more.
Great. Okay.
Is that it? Okay. Goodbye. Sweet. Good luck, Sienna.
And Sienna, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming in. We've done a few workshops with you in the summer with a group of your friends, or I mean, I don't know whether
we're friends.
And then we got to spend the autumn developing your work, which was really, really exciting.
It's been really enjoyable working with you and like seeing the story evolve. So as we were saying with Debbie, we did some world building workshops, and you wrote the beginning of what became the story that we worked on together. So today we're going to be listening to Before the Now, which is an 11-minute audio fiction piece that Sienna has been developing with us over the last few months.
Yeah.
So the piece started when we were doing the workshops in the summer. Yeah, and it's changed. It's not changed massively, but
it's still got like more or less the same ideas, but I think it's really improved now, which I really like.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's like the meat of the story is still like there of what you originally had. We've not butchered it too much.
No. And the meat Nina's referring to, we'll get to a little bit later.
Yeah. Sienna, is there anything that you want to say about the work? Sometimes some of the artists might have a preference. I don't think you probably will, but some people will have preferences if you listen to it out loud or in earphones.
I don't really have a preference, but I really hope you enjoy it.
Great. Yeah. Perfect. Well, see you back in 11 minutes and hope you enjoy the work.
Struggling babble slowly fades to silence, and then I fell, dead still, in horror. My eyes started to uncontrollably twitch, and my hands started to uncontrollably shake. I looked down at my stomach, approaching the hellacious wound with my unsteady hands, and there I saw it. The cold, rigid metal shank plunged deep into my hot, sticky body. She must have twisted the oxidized shank around my stomach about 5 times, let's say, before she drew it out and cowardly ran away. And that, my friends, was that. Or so I thought. Have you ever experienced an attack? An attack that wasn't your fault, but you ended up paying the price? Didn't think so. 30,000 people died trying to rescue Minerva. Short, quick breaths of air narrowly escaped my lungs. Heart racing, body beating, vision impaired. Being attacked has its ups and downs. More downs than ups. Firstly, being dragged along the floor towards my death ripped one of my ears out. It's fine though. My ear will grow back any day now. Anyways, back to the story. First off, I might just tell you a bit about myself. My name's Audrea, I have jet black hair, I am very, very clumsy, and I have a long beakish nose. That would make sense since we all evolved from owls. Or that's what my mum told me. I'm only 16, and I was star-crossed with being born into a royal family, the Euripides. I've always had to wear that stupid crown that gets tangled up in my hair. I swear it's like a curse. Being born into royalty, in my opinion, is loathsome. My sister Fiona died when I was very young. My family hates talking about it. They haven't told me about the incident, or even if there was an incident. In fact, they don't tell me about anyone. On a different note, I'm actually destined, or whatever, to be queen. Let me explain. In our family, the eldest out of the former king or queen's children can either pass the crown down to the next eldest sibling or the oldest sibling of their own children. It's very confusing, and I'm aware. My mum has no siblings, so she passed the crown down to my older sister, who only had it for a year or two, and then, she passed, and now the crown's mine. Ah, my coronation. I entered wearing my late mother's beautiful dress and a pair of Dior heels. The white smoked-coloured dress caressed my shoulders and lightly trailed along the aisle. As beautiful as the dress was, I could almost smell my mother's scent, and I had to drown it in my most expensive perfume because I couldn't afford to smell like old and mould on my best day. I sat in the chair of estate and I noticed something a bit odd. As much as I loved the attention and the many lovely faces looking up at me, I couldn't help but acknowledge the fact that some ugly people, who I did not invite by the way, were sitting at the back. They kept on talking and yawning and chuckling at me, and some angry expressions. However, some looked quite sad. I didn't care. Nothing would ruin this day for me, not even those poor, grotesque tramps in the back. Many of my aunts and uncles that I didn't even know existed turned up to the coronation, and the amount of compliments.
Your hair, milady.
Your crown is so nice.
Your dress, it's simply splendid.
Everyone was so happy and warm, and it was perfect, even down to the last detail. Wait, no, not everyone was happy. I was seconds away from being crowned the new Queen of Minerva when something I saw out of the corner of my eye immediately caught my attention. It was a scroll of paper, just lying on the floor. I think this is an appropriate time to mention a new trend going around called butt code. I heard it from a friend of a friend, and she said it was something about images or swells. I wasn't really listening at the time. I was more concerned about what I was going to feed Cassius, my pet, later. Squalene or Hickgen, both mountain range animals and similarly delicious. I ended up picking Squalene. Anyways, it seemed to belong to one of those tramps in the back of the abbey, because as soon as I saw it, he was quicker than a mouse to enforce his tight grip and snatch it away. I was 5 days in, being the newly crowned Queen of Minerva, and although I was the Queen of the world or whatever, I was just so fixated on the crown. It was pure gold with ruby, emeralds and sapphire gems encrusted in, glinting in the pale moonlight. So precious. I would spend my mornings just staring right at it, almost like I was in a trance. On the 6th day of rain, it is tradition to sit up on the wise old oak tree and gaze across the kingdom you rule. I personally think that's so boring, but I had to. As an elegant royal, we are supposed to sit beneath the tree, but that's so bleh. I wanted to climb up. Lucky for Cassius, he could fly, but I was the one struggling. I reached the top, and even though I didn't want to admit it, it was amazing. The purple sun was rising along the horizon, shining light on all the buildings and farms and... Cages? Wait, why were there cages? What was inside? This sparked my curiosity so much that as I leaned forward to try and make out what was in the cages, I fell. It's embarrassing, but just pretend nothing happened. I wasn't going to give up. I was going to find what was inside.
What's in the cage?
Where would be a good view?
I'm not sure.
The study has big windows, but isn't high enough. Oh, the astrology tower. Yes! Oh my god, it has a telescope and is definitely high enough. I 100% knew my dad's stinky tower was going to be put to use someday. I ran as fast as I could, the crisp wind navigating through my hair and the grass being kicked up after every step. I got to the tower and sprinted up the stairs, tripping up every 5 seconds or so. I'm not the athletic kind. I'm more into sitting pretty, as I do it so well. Finally reaching the top, I took a second to catch my breath. Quick second to fix my hair and... No, this isn't the part when I die, so you can stop crying. This was my kidnapping. I was just fixing my hair in the reflection of the astrology tower windows, and I saw a quick movement over my shoulder. I spun around and no one was there. However, someone was lying on the floor. They grabbed at my ankles and my whole body slammed to the floor and I was dragged away. I must have blacked out for a few seconds or so, because once I regained consciousness again, I found myself in a little black room. Frantically, I started banging and gripping the walls to find some sort of exit or door. This is when my fingers traced along a marking. It was the Euriped's royal sign. The room must have been somewhere in the castle. After a few minutes of strategizing and realizing no gorgeous prince was going to kick down the walls and save me, I had to do it myself.
Stupid animal.
Cassius? What are you doing here? Are you okay? Oh, Cassius. Some stupid idiot threw my precious Cassius into the torturous room with me. As I leant over to hug him, I saw the paper I saw at the coronation. Why is it here? Would it be linked to my kidnapping? I kept staring at it, trying to figure out what it would be. But it was a dark room. How could I see? I looked up, and to my surprise, the door was left ajar. How could someone be so dense that they would leave the door open while someone they just kidnapped was in it? Gosh. This was my only moment to escape, so me and Cassius had to lay low and crawl, which wasn't too hard for him. We were outside of the room, and we were met with a staircase. I'd seen this staircase before. It was the one at the bottom of the astrology tower. Even though this was my castle and my kingdom, I did not know I had a secret dungeon underground. We snuck up, and I tripped again. Looking back, this was probably the reason why I died. The trip made a loud echo sound, and we froze, dead still. We seemed fine, and started our trek up the stairs again, and this is when it happened. 1 minute she was right behind me, and then she was just gone. I didn't fully turn around, but I could hear the struggling echoes from her. Blood. I could smell blood, but not mine, Audrea's. Now I couldn't turn around. I couldn't bear to see my beloved owner in such incredible pain. She couldn't speak properly, but I made out that she would want me to carry on. Maybe. She was one moody girl, and maybe she wanted me to stay and pass with her, but I was not going to do that. I ran up those stairs like my life depended on it. I got to the top, and the window was open. I was tempted to jump out, so I did. I'm very spontaneous, half reptilian, quarter eagle and quarter dog animal. The fall wasn't too bad. As I was graciously falling, I saw the war zone the once tranquil royal garden had become. Blood everywhere. The wise tree had fallen, and my best friend, a Tyrannosaurus Rex, started floating up to the sky, and suddenly so was I. Minerva was falling to pieces, and it was time to find a new home.
Welcome back. I hope you all enjoyed the work Before the Now by Sienna Rackal.
Is there anything behind the piece that you were thinking about when you were writing, or that you took from maybe the workshops we did together?
I think when we watched the films in the workshop, that was very inspiring because we were told to write something futuristic or science fiction, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think of science fiction, I think of more like Star Wars, and I was like, how am I really going to base something off of Star Wars, which has already existed? And so watching the films, especially because they were two different films, like one was cartoon and one was real life, The Matrix.
Yeah.
And the other one was WALL-E. I think I took inspiration from that, but like I didn't involve too many of their ideas into my work. But
yeah, there were sort of two kind of very different speculative futures that were presented.
Yeah, I think that was a bit of a learning curve for us as well, because I mean, you're 14 and most of the people in the room with us were kind of the same age, and The Matrix is, you forget it's a film you need to watch a few times before it makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that might have also been kind of good as well, because we were talking about science fiction and speculation, and so got to kind of break down bits of the story.
I think it's something when you've been watching The Matrix for so long, it's your fifth time watching it. You kind of see what's coming.
Yeah. I don't understand when they're in the Matrix or when they're out. I just don't understand it. The directors must have been really confused.
Yeah, it takes a while to. I think it's one of those things that you almost need to watch that film a second time to like then know what's coming up, and you notice things that you didn't notice before. Yeah. So when we were doing the workshops, we were talking a bit about the technique of the unreliable narrator. And I remember you kind of picking up on that, or that kind of seemed to resonate with you quite a lot. And I was wondering whether for the listeners whether you want to describe what the unreliable
Yeah.
narrator is.
Okay. So I thought that was a really cool idea when Nina was telling me about it, because I wanted to make the character Audrea really naive and really childish and really like giddy basically. And I just thought it'd be such a cool concept to put that through, like, because she's the narrator in the film, like, more or less. Like, she talks to the listener. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
She talks to the listener, and she kind of gives her opinion on a lot of stuff, except when Cassius does.
Yeah.
But I think also you see like the story through her eyes, so you see it through her opinions and stuff, and how she's very biased on stuff, but in her favour.
Yeah, it's interesting how you don't really. Usually, the narrator is always kind of meant to be this reliable character. We watch it, and narrators are usually, in documentaries.
Yeah,
sometimes,
yeah.
I'm trying to think of the.
Or they're kind of impartial.
Nature. Yeah, I was going to say the nature documentaries. What are they? Attenborough.
David Attenborough.
Yeah.
He's a narrator, and you believe him, and it is a factual show.
Yeah.
But so you get used to when someone's being a narrator to always believe that what they're saying and that what they're saying is rational and true.
Yeah, and they keep you updated as well because it's the narrator.
And so you kind of wanted to make this character flip, I guess. There's meant to sort of be that reveal, usually with the unreliable narrator, where you kind of start to realize towards the end of the story, you think, wait a minute, I don't think that they're this kind of rational person that they're meant to be, or their views maybe are not it's always hard to be like who has the right view, but there's something maybe slightly more sinister behind their thoughts.
Or she's not very likable, is she?
She's not. Not. I mean, that's how I wanted her to be anyway.
No, I mean, I think we talked a bit about this before as well, but is Audrea based on like a historical figure or someone in your own life?
Yes,
or...
no, actually. She isn't, but loads of like, you see on the internet loads of girls being really like mean and stuff, and there's always like a perception of like teenage girls being really mean, especially like even through the film Mean Girls, for example. Like those girls are mean, so you always have that kind of idea, and I just wanted her to be like a really mean girl, but very in like a subtle way, but then she's also
I mean, this might be too personal of a question, but is that something that that meanness or that perception of girls as being mean, is that something that you experience in your real life, or is that something that you think just experiences in fiction? Like, is it sort of a fictionalized?
I think it's definitely it will happen in reality. Thankfully, I haven't dealt with any mean girls in my life.
That's good.
Yeah, actually no, it's a lie. I have, but I'm not going to say who they are. But yeah, it's definitely, I think it's more portrayed as like more dramatic in fiction. I don't think anyone would go around exposing the mean book, or the burned book, sorry.
Yeah.
That's really cool though.
No, but I guess it's also that you get to see like what she cares about too, or like maybe where that like meanness comes from in her. One of the things, I guess, thinking about like the science fiction bit, and we were talking about the Matrix earlier and so on, it's a bit unclear when the piece is set, like what timeline it is, until at the very end, when you realize that this is the beginning of Earth, and it's kind of an origin story of Earth, which sort of places this like billions and billions of years ago.
Yeah.
I was thinking in that then, and like thinking about the beginning of worlds and of planets and so on. How do you imagine the beginning of Minerva, the planet that Audrea, the main character, is queen of? What do you think the beginning of it was like?
I don't know, but I watched the film Don't Look Up, and at the end of the film, I think it's Meryl Streep and Jonah Hill, they end up on this like they end up on a planet. Have you guys watched it? Yeah. They end up on like a planet with like this really weird, the like generic new planet, basically like really foresty and green. I sort of wanted to base my idea off of that, because I thought if it's too like industrial, like buildings everywhere, as a new planet, it wouldn't be too interesting. So I really wanted it to be like foresty and
the new
colourful.
planet, as in being the Minerva.
Yeah, being
right.
Minerva.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because usually those perceptions of different planets are always pretty, well, they're always kind of futuristic.
Yeah.
They always seem to be more advanced.
Yeah.
I always wonder about why those perceptions of a different planet would be that, or that it would be so similar to ours, that the materials would even be similar. I don't know, this is just something that I've always thought about, thinking how like on our planet we have like those 3 states, like solid, liquid and gas, and I always think, would there be, but maybe on some planets there's different.
Like oobleck.
What's oobleck?
Oobleck. Oh my god, I made it in science club in primary school. I was really happy about that. It's like cornstarch and water, I think. And it's like a substance that's, when you hold it in your hand and you squeeze it, it's solid for about a second or two, and then when you let it go, it becomes a liquid, which is so cool.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
They did an episode on this on Mythbusters, and they had someone run across a pool of it to see if they could, like, because it has that thing, it turns solid when it has pressure applied. So if you can like run, can you run across a pool? And then I guess going back to the beginning of a piece, since we're talking about like origins as well, the title Before the Now, what made you think of calling it something like, it's not directly related to the story in a way, it's quite open, but
like the now for us is planet Earth, the present moment that we're living in right now, and Minerva was before that, so it's a very like umbrella term basically. Like it's really open, like before the now. It's kind of like Back to the Future. It doesn't really make that much sense, but it kind of does.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It's kind of like thinking about if there was a whole civilization before the beginning of Earth and the civilization that we know too.
Yeah, because it makes me think about the reveal. I know we're kind of at the beginning of the conversation and I'm fast forwarding to the end. But at the end, there's this reveal when the dinosaurs float up into the sky and find Earth. And it suddenly puts this fictional story in relation to our own world. Yeah. I mean, so in one way, it kind of reminds me of the end of, and now I realize I might be spoiling a film that you haven't seen yet.
No, it's okay.
Of Planet of the Apes. Have you seen?
I've seen like it comes on TV, so I watch like little bits of it, but I've never watched the whole film.
Do you know what the ending is of Planet of the Apes? Okay, maybe I won't. Maybe I
No,
won't
you
ruin
can
it.
spoil it. You can spoil
Okay,
it.
no, I'm not going to spoil it, because if you ever do watch it,
Okay.
I think it's good to watch it the first time and not know the end.
Okay.
So I won't. But some of the listeners who have seen it will know what I'm talking about. But I guess there is sort of this thing that makes me think, with the dinosaurs going to find Earth, it does make me think, because obviously Audrea and the sort of the class or the kind of being that Audrea is the sort of dominant being or animal that exists on that planet. And the fact that the animals that end up actually finding another planet aren't the sort of dominant species. I say dominant with little quotations. It does make me think, we always think about this sort of narrative of trying to find another planet because we're starting to kill our planet. And there's this idea that we will be the ones that will find another planet, like that humans will be the one that eventually make it to Mars. And there's something about your story that kind of makes me think, well, maybe it won't be. Like, we could create these pathways to another planet, but maybe it might not end up being us that actually survives on those planets. It could be different kind of biology or microbiomes. So cool.
I find that so amazing.
Or maybe it's Cassius, and Cassius is
to repopulate the Earth.
But was there so I was about to say, was there a decision in wanting to make it the dinosaurs that go to Earth? But then I realized that, of course, it's the dinosaurs that go to Earth because it's dinosaurs that were on the Earth first. But it does make me think about conversations about the climate crisis. I always feel like, Niamh, is climate crisis the right terminology?
Climate crisis, climate breakdown.
Climate breakdown.
Just don't say climate change. The climate is always changing.
And so for you, Sienna, were you thinking about the climate crisis at all when you were writing the story?
I actually wasn't, which is really weird because it's like a really big thing now.
Yeah.
But I don't think it much incorporates into my story that much, because she's not like off the earth off Minerva because of the climate, but I can see like how it could relate.
Well, it feels a lot like it's a political struggle.
Yeah.
You know, she has an uprising against her in essence.
True.
I
She's
totally
much
thought
hated.
when we started doing the workshops, I totally thought that, especially like showing Wall-E in the workshops,
Yeah.
which is a film about kind of the climate.
It's a
Yeah.
film
Yeah.
about waste.
Yeah.
And too
Like
much of it.
environment, yeah.
I totally thought that all the stories that everyone would make in the workshops would primarily be about the climate crisis, just because it's so like
Yeah.
the stories about climate crisis just imply a future already, or like
Yeah.
thinking about
Yeah.
it, or narratives in
Well,
the
I'm even
news.
thinking both of the films that we showed, which makes sense with what you've written. We showed Wall-E and The Matrix, which are both about don't believe the authorities.
Yeah.
Oh
And
my
then you've
God.
written from the perspective of the authority
Yeah.
and how much you shouldn't believe her because she's got some wacky ideas
Yeah.
about how the world should revolve around her.
Oh, I've seen loads of Illuminati videos come up on my For You page, and it's so weird because it's just like,
On TikTok.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's with this song like California Dreaming in the background, which has just ruined the song for me because now it just sounds really like detrimental.
Oh, weird. California Dreaming for Illuminati.
For the videos, like all the videos under that sound, and it's just like the government put too much chlorine in water, you're gonna die, and it's really like negative actually. But
Yeah, there's so many conspiracies
I
on
know.
TikTok, but I always find it so weird because there's such a short amount of time to fit in
yeah,
any information, so it's instantly kind of, it's not clickbait, but I guess it's sort of,
Yeah.
they give you little sound bites, and,
Yeah.
and with the ominous music sometimes behind,
Yeah.
or maybe California Dreaming. I've not come across those.
I mean, what interests you in conspiracy theories? Because
I
we talked a little bit before.
I just love how wacky they are, and how like I'm genuinely interested in the ones that do make sense, because there's some that are just, I don't know, Tutankhamun's gonna come back to Earth, you know.
Yeah.
There's really like weird ones, but then there's ones that do actually make sense, which I'm really like invested in.
Were there any of them that you were thinking about in particular as we are going through and like editing the story together?
Yeah, there was one that you told me about the crown and the jewels.
Oh, that's actually not a conspiracy. Well,
Oh no, it was it.
Well, I
Was
guess
it?
Well, I
It's a
don't know. I think
curse.
it's an interesting thing
Yeah,
here where
yeah.
we're talking about where conspiracies and folklore kind of
Yeah.
converge, because
Yeah.
actually you're talking about folklore, but you know, conspiracy theories could, at some point in the future, we might look back on them as a form of
Yeah.
folklore, because a lot of these conspiracy theories won't ever amount to anything, so they will eventually,
but they won't make it into historical records.
unless maybe they're stories. But
Yeah. Well,
but
this is
go for explain the
Yeah.
story about the crown.
So when we were talking about the story after we'd had a bit of a break in summer, and the original version of the story, you talked a lot about the crown and her being kind of cursed. And
Yeah.
we were trying to figure out what other kinds of curses had happened. And at the time, I was listening to, shout out to an amazing podcast, Empire podcast. Really, really good if you want to learn about the British Empire in India, the origins. They have a great series about the Koh-i-Noor diamond, which is the diamond that was in the Queen's crown, but it's still there, that was stolen from India. But the reason why it's only ever worn by a queen or the queen consulate of the current king, so Camilla now, I guess, I don't know the royals that well, is that every man who's worn it seems to have been cursed. They all seem to come to early deaths. The famous scene in the first season of Game of Thrones where there's a man who has Daenerys' brother has like gold poured over his head to give him a permanent crown. That was something that happened to a man who wore the Koh-i-Noor diamond. Then later on,
There's also I think that story is also in The Hobbit,
yeah,
where the main dwarf
yeah,
is like overcome by greed.
yeah, because these stories would have been in kind of Indian and Middle Eastern history from about the like 1700s, so they would have trickled through time almost as myth because they're so gruesome. But yeah, we were talking about that really creepy story. I can't give the full details, but if you want the full details, listen to Empire Podcasts. They have 3 episodes, I think, on it.
But yeah, so you were saying that now, so the queen that just died did wear the crown. I feel like maybe I'm just using the wrong language about the royal family. I don't know.
She wore it. So the first queen to wear it was Queen Victoria, I think. But none of the kings of Britain have worn that crown because of the bad luck associated with it. And even Queen Victoria didn't want to wear it until she was blessed by the last son of the Mughal Empire, who loved Queen Victoria so much that he kind of gave her his blessing.
Also, there was the reference to, or not the obvious reference, but the sort of reference to conspiracies in your work was also I wanted to ask also about buck code, which you mention in the work. And I was wondering whether you could, I don't know how much in the back of your head you kind of fleshed out what buck code was, but it's definitely, it feels very mysterious when you kind of briefly describe it in the story. And I was wondering, if you had any other thoughts on what buck code is and where it comes from, what are its origins?
It's basically like Morse code, but I just wanted another name for it. I just think it's really cool. I think Morse code, the whole concept of Morse code was really cool. It's like another language, basically, with just using lights, basically, in the war as well. Actually, my geography teacher was telling me how I don't think the language exists anymore, but knots. I don't know if you've heard of it. I think it's in South America. And they use, like, string and, like, knots in string to communicate. It might be, I'm not sure. But I just think the whole concept of, like, a new language is really cool.
Or like a secret code.
Yeah, like a secret code, or like
well, I mean, almost computer code is almost like that. Like binary code of zeros and ones is kind of really similar to.
Zeros and ones are so boring because I associate that with maths, and I do not like maths.
Or even like going back to like the Illuminati conspiracies, they would have like hidden codes. You would write notes to one another, but you'd only pick out a certain amount of words, or you'd have an index and stuff.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking about that in relation to the group who ultimately end up kidnapping and murdering Audrea. Why do you think they were using? Do you think they were using buck code, or why?
That's such an interesting question, actually. Yeah, I hope so. I mean, they were really like sneaky how they kidnapped her, but I think they could have been using Morse code as well. It's not said in the piece, but I think.
Well, you'd had in an earlier version, you had a little bit about a civil war that was happening, which I don't think is in the final.
No, they
version.
just rebel.
It's referenced, but
Yeah.
Yeah, do you have any thoughts on like where that idea of a civil war or the rebellion might have come from? Like any films you've watched or stories or something from real life, like it could be from history.
Not really. I did watch Enola Holmes, which is also like inspired because she uses flowers to communicate with her mum, which is really cool. Like she has a book and it has different like types of flowers in it, and they use like the first letter of the flower or something like that. And it's really cool when they communicate through newspapers as well, like circling words in newspapers. That movie was set when the suffragette movement was not suffragette movement, but her mum was like involved in
protests or something.
Protests for women,
It's interesting. Have you ever learned any sort of secret, or when you were younger, did you ever have any secret languages?
Egg language. Have you guys heard of that?
No.
Oh, it's really cool. I saw it on TikTok actually, but it's okay, I'm gonna try and remember correctly. It's you take the normal word, and between each where there would be a vowel in the word, you replace it with the letters D and G, or G and D. I can't remember, but it sounds like really weird. It's like I can try and find an example, but it's really like.
And so, I'm assuming you haven't learnt it.
I haven't learnt it fully, but when I found out my mum knew about it, I really wanted to talk to her with that language. But
is there anyone you'd be like, hiding your conversation from, or would it
My
just...
mum,
Yeah.
which is where I wanted to learn it from.
Yeah.
Actually, I forced my brother to learn it with me as well, and we could
okay.
only say about a sentence, but it was really fun.
I don't think I ever learned any secret languages. It would have. Oh well, my sister and I went to French school, and my parents didn't know how to speak French, so that
Yeah.
was maybe the secret language.
Ooh. My mum, I was always terrible at learning Irish in school, but my mum would speak Irish to me, and she'd speak Irish to me, especially if we were abroad somewhere and in an elevator, and she wanted to like say something about someone who's in the elevator with us. Not a great tactic in somewhere like Australia or the US, because there are a lot of Irish people around.
Yeah, my mum and my older sister, they speak French. So when they don't want to talk in front of me or my younger brother, they just speak French, and it's very rude, actually.
Yeah, it is rather.
Yeah.
It is rather.
It's really annoying as well, because I really want to know what they're saying, because I'm very nosy.
Yeah, I guess that's a good incentive to learn French.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you about not the story, but also your interest in acting and sort of that like that interest in immersing yourself in different worlds.
Yeah.
Do you find that a beneficial, or sort of not in terms of just educating yourself about acting and about the skill of acting or storytelling, but do you find that sometimes learning through stories is a way of engaging with the world?
Yeah, definitely. If you sit in like a lecture or a conference for like an hour or something, you won't pick up much because you just get bored, and that's just plain simple. But if you're telling a story through it and you're using actions and you're using like rhyming words, I think people just tend to pick up like notes easier. But that's just an example. Yeah.
Well, I'm even thinking, because Nina and I went to a conference not that long ago. It was in the Wellcome Trust. It was called Beyond the Visual, and it was a conference about how different arts networks and institutions are looking at people with visual impairedness, and how they're finally creating resources for those people. One of the final talks of the day we went was a Canadian man who was talking about his love of fireworks, and he told it through a story about how he would go and see fireworks as a kid, and he had a degenerative condition where his sight got worse and worse. And one year he went back to this same place where he used to always see fireworks as a kid, but with his sight could no longer see them, but his friend who was with him could. And so he asked his friend, describe to me what you see. And his friend was saying, it's like tears of fire.
Oh,
and so that
sweet.
That always sticks, because there's this very like creative or visual or storytelling.
Oh, you also said that someone would draw the things on his back.
It became a whole project. Yeah, he had sighted people with non-sighted people kind of drawing on their backs or on their body on their backs or on their bodies the figure of the fireworks. Bringing it back to the story, because we've rambled away a little bit. So Audrea is not human, and the only creatures we recognize from Earth in this story are the dinosaurs.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about Audrea's species? What she looks like? Because we get a bit of an idea, but...
It was inspired by the first workshop that we did, her species, when we were looking through catalogues and magazines and stuff. And just like features that would notice about models, like some of them, it's just really simple, like some of them had black hair, some of them had blonde hair, and also I saw a video of how different, like how we would have I saw a video of how different we would have looked if we'd evolved from different animals. So like if we had evolved from lions, we would have like really like
big hair,
really
we'd
hairy. It'd just be really hairy. So it was like inspired by that, and I saw a video of if we'd evolved from owls, and the person looked quite creepy. I think it was AI generated, but they had just had a long beakish nose and
kind of pointy and not very skin-like.
Like a little mouth underneath, which is just is really weird. But I thought it'd be a really cool concept to make her not adapt from apes, or like monkeys. Yeah.
I'm imagining her eyes as being like really big and all black.
Yeah, really wide.
Do you think she can see behind her? Her neck is like...
Oh my god, yeah, they
Ultra
turn their
skinny.
neck like fully.
Yeah, because she also doesn't fly. Like there's a bit later on in the
Yeah.
story where like Cassius is able to fly.
Yeah.
And then maybe as well, because I think there were some versions, because we've worked on a few different versions together, and some versions had more descriptions of Cassius and some less. Maybe if you could also talk a little bit about like what Cassius looks like, how do you imagine him to be, and also where do you imagine him to go? Like, does he go to Earth as well, or?
In the end, I think he just floats away, doesn't he?
Floats away, but
Yeah.
not to Earth. He just
Not to
floats.
Earth. We can make it like a
He
sequel,
becomes-
like
Yeah.
Cassius.
Yeah, Cassius's adventures.
Yeah, that'd be so cool. Please fund us for that. No.
But also, so what happens, what's sort of Audrea's fate? Because the story just kind of ends abruptly.
Yeah.
Or her story,
Her story,
ends,
yeah.
Yeah, because it's the end of Minerva too.
Yeah.
Her planet dies as well.
So it's kind of questioning the reader, if we kill our planet, which hopefully we do not, what would happen, because obviously we wouldn't start floating in space. That's what the dinosaurs did. It kind of, I hope it left the listener with questions about where she would go as well. So I'm not going to answer the question.
Okay,
Great way of
yeah,
getting
yeah.
out of it.
That's for the listeners to decide what happens to her
Yes.
next. And maybe like another thing around her story, because we talked a little bit about this Kohinoor diamond, and the fate and the sort of curse that's associated with it. And you say there's a curse in her family as well. Do you have any idea about like what happened to her sister, or because this kind of, or are we also left ambiguously kind of wondering?
Yeah, her sister dies. I'm just trying to remember my own story. Yeah.
Like, do you think, was it the same group that ended up stabbing Audrea that caused that death, or is it something more mystical?
I think I hopefully wanted to go for the more mystical path of it. Otherwise, it would just be a rampage of people killing like the royal family from Minerva.
We're not trying to incite any killings on the royal
Yes,
family, by the way.
please
This
do
is
not.
purely fictional.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, also I was interested in what made you want to use a sort of like a sort of royal family as the basis of your story. Like, was there, because it's obviously it's sort of like such a classical form of storytelling.
Yeah.
We do it all the time. Game of Thrones is, you know, but we're drawn to stories about families in power, which historically are usually royal, and that's starting to kind of change a bit. Yeah, why did you choose to write about a royal family?
I think it's more interesting to write about like a family in power rather than, I don't know, an ordinary family in the village. Because, I mean, if I wrote about an ordinary family in like the village or the area they lived, it'd be cool to add like a secret backstory or something. But I think with a royal family who has like loads of power and supposed to be well respected, like for them not to be respected and a whole rebel against them, it just seemed like a cool idea.
Kind of what happens when you take their perspective when things are going badly.
Yeah.
Because I guess it is, you do also wonder then, because you hear the perspective of a very bratty teen
Yes.
princess or
Very
queen,
bratty.
even.
Queen, actually.
Yeah, queen. And it makes you kind of feel for what is it like to be under her rule.
Yeah.
Like, I'm imagining right now, imagine if the current
God.
monarch, I don't know if there are any current monarchs that are that young. I guess I wonder how different Audrea might have been if she wasn't royalty.
I think she'd be less entitled because obviously she grew up in a family that she'd got given everything. So this is just from like her background basically. So I wanted her to be from like a family who would give her everything and she would have loads of stuff. And that's just the way she was brought up almost. So for her to like completely go off of that and live like a civilian would be really weird. So for her to like take the civilians' ideas who rebelled, it'd also be really weird because she can't put herself in that position. So it's almost come natural to her that she's really bratty and she's really like, I don't know.
But it's funny. I feel like there's always so many stories about royal families, and then when the younger kid then ends up being the one that comes to power, the like, because usually it's the eldest that will first come to power, and then maybe they'll die or they'll abdicate, or and then when the younger person comes in, the story is always told that the younger person was always meant to be the right person,
like the chosen one.
They were more rational and they were less bratty. That's usually kind of always the way that the story goes, is because they were never told that they would have power, so they're more humble or something. Whereas for your story, do you think, just in terms of backstory for yourself, do you think that her sister was just as bratty?
I don't think so. I wanted her sister to be like, just in my head, I didn't write it down on the paper, but I wanted her sister to be really nice. I wanted her to be the complete polar opposite, like be really bratty. I wanted her to have like a really kind older sister, whose obviously tragic death has impacted her, but she doesn't really show it because she's still bratty.
Yeah, I was going to say, is the brattiness brought about by her sister dying?
No, just since day one she's been a brat.
It's just a personality. It's just a personality.
Yeah. We're talking about another world, and also kind of about the impact of the present on the future, and about Audrea and this kind of brattiness that she has. I guess I have like kind of a 2-part question. And so one of them is, how do you think has writing this story about like the origin of Earth in a very fictional way, has it changed how you think about like Earth's history or like your own future?
Yeah.
And then on double fold of that, in a more like creative slant on it, how do you think Audrea imagined her future was going to be before her very untimely
I
death?
wanted her to feel like her future would be so planned out for her, because she's so naive and she doesn't take like other people's opinions into account. Like she doesn't listen to the civilians in the village, so they end up killing her, which is not the best solution. But yeah, I just wanted her to think she would have a very planned out future, and everything would be under her control, and everyone would be like very submissive towards her. Obviously doesn't happen, but yeah.
And do you think that's changed how you think about your own future? Or
Yeah, because I do, at this, because everyone else, like, okay, this is going to be really hard to word, but everyone else that's grown up, they've had a future, and they've had like it's been quite stable, but now because of the climate crisis, you don't know, like you're almost questioning how your future is going to be. Is it going to be like the other people's futures or not? Because we're the generation to grow up with phones and technology, and they weren't. So our future, in a way, could be completely different to theirs, or the same. Like, yeah.
I think there's also a sense of like, now younger generations, like I'll say anyone like under 35, there's a sense of, by the time we become old people, the world is going to look or the planet and the ways in which we live is going to have to be quite different because of the climate too.
Yeah, exactly.
Even like the ability to have phones, or the materials of the planet to like make technology be technology is going to be in question. And
yeah, because we even have like VR, which is fake reality. So that, I think VR is a really cool concept though. I had tried on a VR headset and it was so cool.
It's funny. I was going to say that it's funny because you described your generation. You're Gen Z, right? Yeah. You're not something younger than that.
No,
I don't know if there's a new one yet.
Yeah.
But how you described your generation to be growing up with phones.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I would have said that if I was to describe my generation, I would say that we grew up with social media. Like, 'cause we define ourselves as like that was the thing that we when I was in high school, Facebook had started. And it's so funny to talk about phones as a thing to grow up with.
Yeah.
When telephones have been around for, not that I'm saying, like, I know that these are not just telephones.
Yeah.
That's how you describe your generation. That's the
Yeah.
defining thing that sets you apart from maybe my generation.
Yeah.
I just think it's
That's
interesting.
completely what I think. I just think in my head, they didn't grow up with phones, we did. But then when you think about it, like, actually, social media and Instagram was introduced when they were also children. But
we didn't have it in our pocket necessarily.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If you had your internet on your phone, your mum was going to kill you because the bill would have been through the roof.
Or like you have to pay for like text messages or calls or something like that.
I remember having only a certain amount of text messages that I was allowed to use.
And running to the shop and getting more credit because you wanted to text your friend. And
It's just like how you see toddlers growing up with iPads and stuff. I wouldn't think of that to be in the last generation. Yeah.
Is that something that you would have grown up with when you were a kid, like really young? Would you have been watching stuff on phones?
Well, I always took my dad's phone.
Okay.
And it was more games than watching anything. I don't really like watch YouTube that much. Just the occasional videos, but it was quite like even now, like, we have phones, it's like we're supposed to be children in a way, and we've grown up really fast. Like, loads of people like my age, even including me, like, I get told sometimes I look 16, but it's also like you kind of have to look 16 because that's the standard of a 13-year-old or a 14-year-old or something, which is really quite sad. But I don't want the future to be like that.
Well, I think there's a lot of pressure. I mean, Nina showed me a video the other day of they were looking at kind of dance stuff on TikTok. And how dance videos now for like Gen Z, everything's really well choreographed and everyone looks really good. And angle, everyone looks great in the camera angle.
The makeup, the fits.
And we just weren't as aware.
And then
of what
they
we
showed
like.
They showed one for like what Gen X?
No, millennials.
For millennials, it was often like webcams on like a computer browser. The quality is really bad and it's dark lighting. Everything is fuzzy. There's no choreography. The camera work is awful. Everyone has terrible hair and no one looks flattering at all. But
it's nice to like not care about that kind of stuff.
It would have, if it went up on YouTube, it would have been seen by like max 50 people. Now TikTok algorithm is going to show it to like minimum a few hundred.
Yeah, definitely.
So.
Well, I think that's all we have time for. Sienna, thank you so much for putting in all the hard work.
My pleasure.
It was a pleasure working with you.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Oh, we really enjoyed it as well.
Yeah.
It's been really nice and really great to see the story change. Yeah. And wish you all the best with acting and other. I mean, we'll be seeing more of each other as well.
Yeah.
But like, it's been really great to see you evolve the story and your own story writing and like thinking about this world. Open up and involved, and we hope it's been as fun for you as it has been for us.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's been great working with a group of younger people, because we're talking to people usually our age or older about the future, and it's really important to get younger perspectives
and to make us feel very old as well.
Yeah.
Millennials.
Yeah. Great. Well, we'll end on that note. 2 millennials and 1 Gen Z saying bye for now.
Goodbye.
Bye. Today we've got Sienna in the studio with us. Sienna, how are you today? I don't think we ever ask anyone how they're doing on the show. I think we just talk over people.
We're just like, it's our show, you're listening
to
us.
Okay. I think, Neve, you need to try this. I obviously just don't have a good...
Cool.